I'm excited for this one. Let's
3 o'clock, everybody's tired. Open bar in about how long?
Yeah, a few more hours.
Maybe we're standing holding an open bar and some tired folks. So.
Yeah, thanks for hanging in there. So, for those of you who don't know Manny, talk a little bit more about his story. I believe storytelling is the best way to learn. Manny is somebody that we hold near and dear to our hearts, somebody that we look up to, and somebody that we want to emulate at the end of the day. So, a little bit more about his story. He came here at 13 on a boat from Cuba as a refugee, ended up in one of the worst neighborhoods in Miami. Somehow stayed out of trouble and stayed alive long enough to start a real estate development firm. And then from there, started building data centers all over the world. And his company, Terramark, was purchased by Verizon Wireless for $2.3 billion. So I'll get into a little bit more about his stories, some actionable advice that you guys can all learn from. And then if we do have time, we'll do a little bit of Q&A. So for the students in the room, Manny, when you were in college or even high school, what were you like? And what was that journey?
Look, again, thanks, Justice, and congratulations. This is amazing. I'm so happy that we came up, learned a lot about what's going on in Florida also. My daughter is also a Gator, as you saw my son go, a Gator as well. So basically, so congrats on everything that you're doing up here. Look, my life has been interesting, to say the least. I had the luck that my parents, my mother, had the fortitude to put me and my sister on a boat and bring us as refugees to the United States, to the greatest country in the world. As you heard me say many times, I'd have to live 10 lifetimes in order for me to be able to pay back what this country's done for me and my family. So I was fortunate enough to come here. As a Cuban-American kid, you don't ask too many questions because typically they slap you in the back of the head and say, shut up. It's not your business. So we really didn't understand very much what was going on. So we ended up here, not speaking English, at a time that Miami was a really changing, to say the least. And like Justice says, it was a hard part of getting out there. So when people say, what sport did you play in high school? I said, I survived. It's true, I literally survived. And basically, and luckily because of the same mother that had the fortitude to put me on the boat, nobody in our family had ever gone to college, but she knew that I had to go to college, so I did. Just to get rid of her, I ended up going to Miami-Dade College, which totally changed my life. I literally would not be here today had it not been for the warmth and reception that I received at Miami-Dade College as a young, troubled immigrant kid. And that made a big difference in my life, and I totally went from this direction to this other direction, embraced education, and ended up going to FAU after Miami-Dade College. So yeah, at that time, here's the one thing people ask me, because here's what the biggest motivation that I had very young and very early on. I hated being poor. My mother was a hotel maid. She had 2 jobs. She peeled shrimps after doing rooms. My dad drove a cab for 16 hours. And it was really hard and sucked being poor. So my biggest motivation is I didn't want to be poor. So once that I embraced education, I said, what is the fastest way for me to go out and, not knowing what I wanted to do, I had no clue what I was talking about. So that's how I started.
So first job?
So here's the interesting part. I was telling Olivia flew up with us, and I was telling Olivia that I wanted to get out into the business world. I really wanted to just get out into the business world. One of the things that I recommend to all of you young guys and girls out here that are looking at it is don't be afraid to dream. Even if you don't know how you're going to pay your rent, don't be afraid to dream. This is something that helped me a lot. When I was very young, and we were really poor, I began reading all these novels and books, and remember still, the $1 billion sure thing. I dreamed about being on my own plane, going to landing in Zurich and going to the Bauhaus and buying $100,000 watches. There was a very famous restaurant in Paris called La Tour d'Argent, it was in all the novels. All the deals happened there. And so when I was a junior in college, I basically was able to, through entrepreneurship, save a few $1,000s, and I bought a 90-day U-Rail pass in Europe. And I'd never been on a plane before, my first plane ride. So I took a cheapest ticket, Bahamas Air, landed in Luxembourg, and spent 3 months on a train, sleeping mostly in the train, but also in hostels and getting to know around. And I physically visited. I went to the Bahnhofstrasse, I said, no money, and I said, I'm gonna come back here one day and do everything that I dreamed about. I literally went to La Tour de Jante in Paris, and I stood in front of it and says, one day I'm gonna come out here without a reservation. and I did all this stuff. You have to dream it. If you don't dream it, you know, it's not going to happen. So that's what I did. I just wanted to get out there the quickest way. And the quickest way was for me, decided, I like people, I'm a marketing person, I like sales, I really like sales, but most of my folks at the time that were graduating were out selling Xerox, nothing wrong with that, Xerox machines or computer, I didn't want to do that. So I decided to become a CPA. And I started my career working for Pricewaterhouse as a CPA. I always say I only had one job in my life. 3 years with Pricewaterhouse. Since then, I've never had a job.
What a beautiful story. It's the power of manifestation, right? Just having a dream, having a vision, making it happen. So I remember that you said, one of the best things that you did was working for Pricewaterhouse, and then the second best thing was quitting, right? So
I paid it back many times.
So you ended up quitting, and I believe you went straight to real estate, right? Started a real estate development fund. What was the transition?
Yeah, so again, one of the reason I joined Price in a big accounting firm, when you start, you really don't do anything exciting, you do grunt work. But Pricewaterhouse, at the time, it was called the Big Eight. They were smart enough to understand the influence of Latin America in Miami, so they recruited a young team, 5 of us. They brought in a partner from New York and a manager from Puerto Rico and created Pricewaterhouse for that.
Whoever that hiring manager was, talent.
Latin American department, and for me that was very exciting because I wanted to travel. I wanted to get to know. So basically I did all the things that you dream about, you never get to do in a big accounting firm. So I traveled all over Latin America and I got to know a lot of people, and Pricewaterhouse said, go tell everybody how great Pricewaterhouse is. And so I did a lot of contacts. So Miami's been a town, up until the last few years, it's been a town of booms and busts. You've had incredible booms and dramatic busts. In the late 70s, which is when I started, it was a big time of boom. There was all kinds of money. If you remember the oil dollars, the petrodollars were coming in, and the Venezuelans were coming in, we used to call them the dame dos, means give me two, because they would buy 2 of everything, right? So basically, so it was a crazy time, and I had a partner that was with Deloitte, and we started a firm called Medina, and our firm was not really to do accounting work. We represented the money coming in and buying property, basically. But our niche was that we would represent the money, never take the commission, and it was all done. And of course, we had, even though we were very young, we had the credibility of Price and Deloitte with us, and that's how we started. We started doing that, which led to real estate, which led to acquiring real estate, which led to developing real estate. So the first phase of my career was in developing real estate and developing complicated infrastructure.
Who would you say is somebody that gave you that early chance throughout this part of your career, those early days? Was there anybody who was like, hey, Manny, I just believe in you and I want to
I tell you, one of the biggest breaks that I got at the very beginning when I started my real estate development, there's a company that was a public company, very well known, called Wackenhut. Wackenhut was a security company. He took it public, it was a former FBI agent. And I got to know George Wackenhut himself, built his headquarters. And he did it because he got to like me. He did it because he said, you know what, everybody's telling me I'm a public company, I'm crazy, trusting you. And that was a big credibility, incredible for me. So he was amazing, he's since passed away. But I'm very grateful for him, and because that led to being able to get bigger financing, more and more and more. Just it was a big part of my success.
Yeah. So, and I know you do a lot of that yourself, giving back, mentoring you, trying to give people that next shot.
Well, I do love to do that, and I feel I have a duty to pay it forward. Right? It's not like I have no choice. I have to do it because people have done it with me, so I absolutely have the ability to do that.
So tell us a little bit more about that transition from that company to starting Terramark. I know that you ended up doing the network access points in Miami, and then you put in a bid to do the real estate, and you ended up running the data centers. So talk a little bit more about that.
So as I was in the development business, it's really funny for all of you. So seeing Jack talking about failure and downs and ups, and all this stuff is basically, so after getting on my way, my career and my business success began going up. And life has a way of, when you begin to believe your own propaganda too much, and you really begin to believe that you're really hot shit, life has a way of taking a 2x4 and smacking it down the head. You're not so hot after all, right? So, but I was believing, I was going up, and, reading about myself in the Miami Herald, and man, all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, right around, there was a major crash. Long story is what happened to one of our developers, because as a developer in real estate, you're as good as your last deal, basically, and so my whole world came crashing down. And luckily, one of my partners, I never ended up filing bankruptcy, but my bankruptcy forms were filled, and that helped me negotiate with the myriad of lenders that I had to negotiate. So what happened is that one of my main partners, another person that was incredibly instrumental to me in my success, was a Lebanese gentleman who was my partner in a few real estate deals. And he knew what I was going through. And at the time, my whole world was literally crashing down. He said to me, you know what, I've been in Kuwait for 40 years. He owned a very successful multi-billionaire. He said, and this is at the time that Kuwait was invaded. And he said, Kuwait is going to be liberated, and it's going to be rebuilt, and nobody knows more people in Kuwait than I do. Are you interested? And I said, Albert, what I'm going through right now, just point the direction. So I went to Kuwait immediately after the liberation. Actually, I was stationed in Tehran, Saudi Arabia, and then went in immediately after the Pioneer Corps, which the only thing that was being picked up by then was the bodies, because the fires were going on. It was really, really a hard time. And then at the time, first we got some big contracts to rebuild Kuwait, and then we got some even bigger contracts in Saudi Arabia, so I stayed in the region and did a lot of work there, basically recruited. Just to put into perspective, I went in with my men, and by the time that I sold the business there, we had recruited 3,500 employees from around the world, everywhere. So then basically, so long story to tell you how I got there. So at the time, I always loved technology, and basically, there was no help desk, so I had to do everything myself. And this is the very beginning of the internet. And I became fascinated with the internet. And the internet was something that I said, how do I play in this, not having a technology background? But I started by doing what I knew how to do, which is the infrastructure. I started building physical infrastructure where the internet sits, basically as a developer, after I come back to the Middle East. And one of those developments was one of the most significant telecommunications projects in the world, which is called the Network Access Point of the Americas, the NAP of the Americas, which we built from the NAP of the Americas. The analogy is Miami International Airport, instead of exchanging passengers, the NAP of the Americas exchanged bits, basically, and we have one of the most robust. So that was again the beginning of the company. NAP of the Americas, connectivity, physical infrastructure, data centers. Our company specialized in mission-critical applications to large enterprises and government agencies. Mission-critical defined if your life depends on it. If the app is down and you die, that's pretty mission-critical. If your business goes out of business, that's pretty mission-critical. So what we did is this whole stack, from the physical data center to the network connectivity, to the cyber aspect of it, to hosting, storage, everything that had to do with the picks and shovels of making that application run. And that was the business plan of Terramark, which I took public, and then eventually grew became a global company, and eventually sold.
It's crazy. It's insane. All the different experiences you have. Do you have like a framework on how you learn? Because it's crazy. Every time I see you, remember every person's name, and you remember every little bit. Are you just gifted, or?
No, listen, I don't know. I tell you, I'm pretty disciplined when it comes to learning. By the way, I want to say something. The whole story of Terramark, everything that I'm telling you, would not have been possible without a former Gator graduate that's back there.
Marvin Wheeler.
Marvin was Marvin was the CEO of Terramark through all this. I mean, one of these days, I haven't written my book yet because what happens is there's certain things that I need to say about Terramark and Marvin that I cannot say until the statute of limitation passes. You'll be ready, Rich.
That's good. So what was the toughest part about building Terramark? How'd you get those first few customers? How'd you build that credibility in the space that you weren't in? What was the most fun part? All of the above.
Yeah, look, I mean, again, one thing that is really fascinating is I've heard some of the presentations before. Brian was amazing, and Jack and everybody. Has anybody here heard anything they haven't heard before on how to succeed? Anybody? What did you hear today that you haven't heard before?
The lesson of grit and how...
You've never heard that you need to have grit? that is BS.
So you've got to burn the bridges and you've got to burn the ships to make it work. So.
I'm telling you the following. I'm trying to make a point.
Yes, sir.
Everything that you've talked about here before, you know already. You know it's hard as shit to do this stuff. You know you got to be dedicated. You got to max out your credit cards. And if you don't have that fire in the belly, don't do it. So you've heard it all before. There's no secret. So what happened in Terramark? We knew we wanted to succeed. We knew, Marvin and I knew, and we knew that if we made the Apple of the Americas what it was, imagine owning Miami International Airport. So there was no way we were going to fail. Literally. You know, there's basically, I loved, somebody said something about the treadmill here. Will Smith, as if you can look it up on YouTube, he said, nobody's going to beat me on the treadmill because he'll die on the treadmill before he quits. And that's what happened. We never quit. We knew that what we had was very special. And then basically surrounded ourselves with people with the same mission. Marvin, Nelson Fonseca, CEO, Jamie, we had a hit team that we basically were working 7 days a week, every day. Not just brainstorming, trying to go from catching, literally catching the ball an inch off the floor and never quitting, right? So basically, and it was a very fascinating time because it's the very beginning of the internet. And, people didn't know what we were talking about. We were saying the nap of the Americas. What nap? What are you talking about?
Take a nap?
Yeah, basically. And then, we're trying to raise money on a public company in 2001. Forget about the implosion of the internet, the bankruptcy of all the telco companies, and then September 11th, and then Wall Street was out to lunch. And then we're trying to raise money. Another learning experience that I always talk when I speak to young entrepreneurs is take the money while it's there. Because we made the mistake, we got greedy. We said, this is going to be worth a gazillion, and then the money wasn't there, and nobody. So we almost had to do almost another near-death experience. So the point being is, we knew that was going to be done. We knew we had to raise the money to keep it up. So my CFO and I would not quit. We basically, at the time, it wasn't like today. I had a 40-pound laptop and a 40-pound projector. I think my arms both grew. We would literally pitch the cab driver from LaGuardia to Park Avenue, right? So never quitting and understanding that, having that belief that eventually what you're going to have is going to come out okay, it's going to be worth the effort.
That's insane. So I think a lot of people will want to hear more about what's the process of taking a company public? What are all the things that you had to do? What were some of the hard parts, some of the lessons?
Yeah, look, taking a company public, and have since been involved in both private and public, it's very difficult, it's hard. It's become even harder right now, basically just because of the process. It's very expensive. It's really, it's something that I very hardly recommend. We just finished taking back a company private, basically, because it's really not, it's not what it seems. Besides dealing, it's hard enough when you're an entrepreneur and you have all these pressures that we talked about here today, and you have all these issues that you need to deal with. On top of that, think about all this in an incredible regulatory environment that you need to comply with, and then you have all the board and everything else. As an entrepreneur, it's really, really tough to do that. So I don't recommend, certainly if you're going to be public, make sure you have a reason why you're going to be public. Don't say because, I'm gonna cash out. If you're gonna cash out,
Sell it.
yeah, basically, so it's not, I'm not a great advocate where your dream is, like, my dream was not to take a company public. My dream was to make money. Taking it public happened to be a great time, great opportunity at the right time.
So then selling the company to Verizon, what was the process like also there? Was it
So,
waiting for? Did
no,
this-
so there's another point that I would say. Most of the companies are never sold, they're bought. And that's a big difference, right? Basically, I mean, for example, we were not looking to sell the company. We basically, I mean, we're always looking for capital, and as well along the way, and as we grew, and the company grew, and, you know, we had our bankers, etc. And then, you know, we basically, Verizon was a customer, and they got it one day, and I still don't know why, but they got it one day, and they had to buy the company. The more I kept saying no, the more I kept increasing the price. As a public company, you know, there comes a point where I'm irresponsible if I don't.
Yeah.
So I didn't, it wasn't like, we went through a lot of processes to raise capital, but basically, the Verizon deal actually came unannounced, in the sense that the person contacted me directly and says, we're serious about this, and that it was done very quickly.
You took your own advice from earlier, you know, take the money when it's there.
Yeah, I mean, you know, listen, where it ended up, it set the highest value ever in this industry, and it wasn't a very difficult decision.
Wow. So then after that, right, you wanted to focus on building for this tech ecosystem, which, you know, I think we could all thank you for. You know, everybody in Miami knows you're the godfather of Miami tech. Even the mayor tells you every time. But, you know, you built Emerge Americas, like Tony was saying earlier, 25,000 attendees, 60 different countries. I mean, the sheer amount of just startups and talent and tech. Thank you for all the great work you do. Now you decided to launch a fund. So tell us a little bit more about your fund. Tell us a little bit more about why now, what you're interested in.
Yeah, so Emerge Americas, at the very beginning, one of the things that was really difficult growing Terramark as a public company and then global company out of Miami is that we had no respect. It was very difficult to recruit. I mean, we had some big government contracts. We're trying to recruit kind of #1 draft picks, right? Profile is 10 years, nothing to do with Florida, but 10 years out of Stanford or MIT. Basically, having worked in an intelligence agency, we're trying to recruit that person to say, really to build your career, you need to come to Miami. It just didn't go together. It was very difficult.
You should have asked him, have you been on a jet ski yet?
Yeah, well, no, listen, here's the biggest deal. If you convince him, because all of them were men, all of them were in Northern Virginia, then you have to convince the wife. That was a more difficult sale, right? Because bringing the wife to Miami, where, you know, where she's thinking, who knows what her husband is going to be doing. So basically, Emerge Americas was born out of how can I change this image? Not knowing that it's not true, because Miami had already incredible talent, incredible universities, incredible so that was it. Emerge Americas was inspired by South by Southwest, and which I used to go to every year. And then I said, if it works, so we tried it. My daughter, Vanessa, and I, the first evangelizer for 2 years, and now it's become a big phenomenon. So we're very, very glad, because it's again part of giving back, right? And it's become, I love, you know, seeing the strength. To put into perspective, the focus and the highlight of Emerge Americas is the startups. We have a startup boot camp that we kind of go and we recruit from all over the world, and then we pick 100 startups and they come and show them. Over the last, this is the 10th year anniversary, over the last 10 years, we've graduated 1,000 startups that have raised over $2.5 billion in there. So it's become a great platform. Along the way, we've also been investing in startups ourselves. You know, and what is happening right now, and why the fund right now, is because I believe this is a phenomenal opportunity. I have not felt like this since the late 90s. I think that the transformation that the internet did, and how it all changed, if anybody sitting here today told you in 1999 or 88, 98, or 2000, even as early as 2000, early 2000s, that the internet was going to do what it has done, you would have said, no way, no way. And the impact has been incredible, right? How it's transformed all our lives. I'm telling you what is happening today is that multiplied by 10 and happening at a dizzying speed. What is happening with AI, next generation AI, what is happening with quantum computing, putting it all together, is going to transform every industry, whether you want to or not. This is not your choice. You know, it's going to It's like Leo Tolstoy, you may not believe in war or war believes in you. You're going to see this coming, right? Basically, you're going to see. So this opportunity we're seeing, coupled with the fact of two other things that have happened. During COVID, everybody got money, some money, everybody wasn't coming to the office or to class, and they were inventing, kind of back there in a garage. So all this whole new breed of startups. And then something else happened, which is the collapse of values of the startup system that literally collapsed in 22. So basically, you had that combination, this amazing transformational opportunity. You had number two, this whole new breed of startups that is coming out, not just because of COVID, but fueled by COVID, and then three, incredible valuation. So we decided to institutionalize our investment process into a fund. We've already raised the fund before, but it was for later stage companies and for startups, and that's why we felt the timing was right.
Amazing. I'm super excited for the fund and everything else. So I want to give an opportunity for a few people to ask some questions, just because while we have you up here, let's get as much time as we can.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Hi, thank you for coming up from Miami as well. We're up there, born and raised, transplanted to Gainesville. And I've spent years building my business, and now I'm at an age where I'd like to retire. How do you transition from being CEO and having this 24/7 responsibility of a business to retirement? And how do you find somebody? Everybody wants to be my employee, but nobody wants to be the CEO. So how do you transition?
It's a great question that I always, so when I sold the company, I did something I had never done. Literally since I got off the boat when I was 13 years old, I never stopped hustling and working, right? Literally. I mean, of course I've taken plenty of vacations, but I never disconnected. So I've had an assistant, she's still with me, she's been with me forever. And I said, I'm going to take a sabbatical. So basically, people say, Manny, no, it's not a sabbatical. Now, when you're in a sabbatical, people think about you being in Nepal, finding enlightenment. So I said, I don't want to see another airplane. I don't want to see a customs agent. I've been living on a plane. So what did I do? I went to the Florida Keys, drinking beer, playing tennis, fishing, doing everything that I like. And I said, now I was lucky enough to be, obviously young, feel young, invigorated. I said, what do I do now? It's very, very disconcerting. What do you mean I don't have 300 emails? What do you mean I don't have any meetings? That decompression took a little bit of time. The first thing I decided, retirement is way overrated. So that's number one. There's no way I'm never going to retire, right? Basically. And number two is that I believe that there's a lot you can do to give back. So that's what we did. We created, and we've done a lot. Hopefully we can do a lot more, but with the Family Foundation, with Emerge Americas, just to give back. We've been so fortunate to do it. How do you, I don't know what business you have, but basically it's very difficult, I believe. I don't think I would have ever been able, in particular in Telemark, to transition in a way where I say, I'm out, I'm going to give it to this person. In that case, it was easier because it was a sale. And I got to tell you, the CEO of Verizon, who I got to know well, wanted me to go and lead the cloud initiative. We became the largest providers of enterprise cloud. And when we sold the company, the two largest providers of cloud was AWS and us, basically. And he wanted me to go and head that entire cloud. I lasted in Verizon 90 days. Literally. And I said to him, oh, listen, as I said earlier, I've had one job in my life. I'm not worth keeping, I promise you. So I don't know how you do that from your point of view, the transition. So if you can sell it, it will be just a clean cut.
If you could go back and have a conversation with your 21-year-old self, what would you say? What advice would you give your younger self?
Yeah, I think I would have probably been a little bit more at the 21-year-old. Let me think. That was the difference. Giving advice to my 19-year-old and my 17-year-old and my 21-year-old, that would be, so I'm trying to think 21-year-old. I would probably just say, maybe be a little bit more disciplined in the sense of, kind of finishing, not finish my education, but be more disciplined, because I was kind of a little bit all over, just kind of, which is kind of good and bad when you're young. In other words, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I was all over the place. I was going this route, I was going this other route. Do I do this? Do I do that? Do I kind of, literally, I think the best way to say is hustling, right? In a good sense of the word. And I think that probably made me waste some time. And I think I didn't stay long enough. Luckily it worked out, but that would be the advice that I would have given myself. Just pace yourself a little bit more, be more methodical as you're pursuing these different potential avenues. As I said earlier, all I really wanted to do was make money, basically, and that would be what I would have done.
Thank you so much for your story. It's so great. And along that line, as far as your youth, you mentioned, and I haven't heard this today, Miami-Dade College, and what it did on your life coming from Cuba. Can you elaborate on how that was, what that meant to you?
So listen, so it's a very, and I always say I cannot do enough of that. Because what happened was this, I was, like I said, I was in trouble, literally barely made it through high school. And then I go to Miami-Dade College. My life, and having been rebellious, I've always been, kind of difficult in the sense that, I don't take things just at face value. So anyways, I get to Miami-Dade College, and I'm okay. I'm thinking it's just a continuation of what I've been doing, right? And it was a nurturing environment. I still have a professor, and forever thank her, Alexandra Alexandratos. I haven't seen her in years. And she knew, because I was with like kids that basically had, so they understood, how angry I was. And they understood, everything that happened. And they really was my decompression chamber. Besides education, which basically they did an excellent job, because from then on, my life changed. It was just the environment of nurturing, that, and this is why it's so important, because they give you that second break. And I'm a big believer in that, because I'm living proof. So that explains it. Yeah.
Hi, I'm very thankful that you came and spoke with us. We're looking forward to your event in March. And I just wanted to know, in the places in your career where you experienced really heavy setbacks, what philosophy did you incorporate that kept you going and kept you moving? What was your personal philosophy?
Yeah, so look, I enjoyed very much hearing Brian Murphy's presentation, because it's so many things that are in common, right? And when he was talking about his wife leaving the groceries, I totally understand what he was going through. But then he said something which resonates very much with me. The greatest advantage of having been way down there, you're not going to get there again. No matter how bad things are, it's like, and I say this to entrepreneurs, oh no, because, my house, are you going to go live under a bridge? No, right? So right now, back to me, right? Basically, so I think I always got strength. And also, when I saw the way my dad, worked 16 hours with the cab, and my mother, and doing all this, and every time that would happen, I would think about them. I said, wait a minute, so I'm having this setback? How do I even compare to what they went through? Etc. So that always gave me that spirit. And I think she's a stubborn woman. Thank God she's still giving me a hard time, but she's a stubborn woman, and I think I got some of her stubbornness. If I believe and I'm passionate, and you get that setback, you just think about it as temporary. It's just basically, you got to be able to, one of the things that all entrepreneurs, if anybody tells you you're not going to pivot, it's going to be a straight line, they're lying to you. So basically you learn, right? And this is where you learn from other people. And that's what the point I was going to make about secrets, right? You learn, that happens. So that happens. So when it happens to you, don't go out and, be I always say, when I speak to them, my number one advice, biggest advice, is something that is 100% under your control. So the most difficult thing, no secret, it's called your attitude towards anything. You go out and you create your brand. This guy and Pablo have created an incredible brand. Is anybody in here that would not for 1 minute give them an opportunity to do a deal with them. No, they've spent years creating that brand. Look, I mean, you ever seen Justice that doesn't have a big smile on his face? I don't know what is going on inside of him. Maybe he's maxed out on his credit cards. I have no idea. Maybe they're about to repossess his car. I have no idea. What it means, but I don't know. So the point is, you have that attitude. So when you failure, what is your attitude? Oh my God. It happens to all of us. Think about friends of yours. I have a friend, I love her to death. And we've been friends forever. Her husband's one of my closest friends. Every time I see her number, she always has a drama. The drama queen. You know, everything happens to her. You know, whatever. So don't be that. That attitude of positive thinking, that is the biggest thing, particularly in faith. When you go in and you say, I'm going to go out here, and I'm going to have a positive, and then you begin shorten your, which is something that I learned, somebody taught me, and I learned also, you shorten your goals. Yeah, it's great to dream, like I was saying before, but it's also shorten your goal. How am I going to make takeoff right? How am I going to avoid the foreclosure, right? So you shorten your goals, you decide, think back and say, am I really going to be worse off than it was before? And then if you really believe in what you're doing, it's going to work out.
Thank you.
We got time for one more, and if not, we'll go on to the next panel.
Hello, I have a question about server infrastructure. Would you, because I'm tempted to do a startup where like there's some people like having trouble counting the votes and stuff. So I was thinking about creating a startup where like you have a non-internet based service where you vote and then it's taken to a non-internet based server. So I was wondering how you would build something like that.
I have no idea, because if you're not connected, it's very difficult to be able to gather, right? So, I mean, if the ultimate security is don't be connected to the internet, right? You can have everything there. But then obviously it defeats the purpose of collaborating and being able to gather. So I think that's a tough one. Right.
Well, look, Manny, you know how much you mean to me, Pablo, everybody. I look up to you. I want to be you when I grow up. Thank you so much.
Hey, listen, just remember the last thought is free advice is worth what you pay for it. So.